All right, so welcome to session 68, episode 68 of Tool Time Tuesday. We decided we were going to present on tips for great presentations in Zoom this time. We actually saw this question on Inside Line. How do I do a good presentation in Zoom? So I'm going to do the best I can. This could be like a full semester long course, how to do good presentations, but we're going to do our best 30 minutes. And then of course we can share more tips on the team. Before we start, I'm Larissa from the Research Medical Library. My partner is Leslie. If you have questions really about anything, you can contact us in the library and we'll try to help you or get you to the right place. I wanted to mention some upcoming classes from the library. We have a whole suite of classes. If you are working on any PMCIDs or you might be working on them, we have NIH Public Access Policy. We have a PubMed class, an EndNote class, and we have a Dear Editor class coming up where they're going to talk a little bit more about these new AI tools that are being used to write papers and other things. So they're going to go into that a little bit more. So that should be really interesting. The next tool time, sorry, I made a typo on this, but the next tool time is going to be Anna Lewandowski, and she's going to talk about OneDrive. So that one should be really exciting as well. I'm sure you've already seen it, but check out the new recognition platform. Super easy to use to send an e-card or send an awesome job award. It's very easy to use, really neat. There's an article on Inside on it. Take a moment maybe this week to send someone an e-card just because it's a nice thing to do. If you don't want to use the platform, you can always send them an email or a message. Sometimes it feels good just to recognize someone else. And definitely, hopefully, feels good for them too. All right, so let's get into these tips. So tips for great Zoom presentations. I know a lot of you have already done these Zoom presentations, so some of this may be repetitive, but hopefully I'm going to show you a few new tools as well, a few new things as well. And please feel free to chat if you have additional ones. One that I still see people not doing is updating their Zoom. So you should have the Zoom app on your desktop, which means when you search your search bar, the Zoom app should pop up. You can update this every once in a while. You can open up the app, go to your little avatar and check for updates. The reason you check for updates is it might reduce any sort of glitches, and it allows you to take full advantage of all the new features. Get familiar and comfortable with the app because it has a lot of functionality in it. That's where you're going to set your audio, you're going to set your video. You can change a lot of your settings. You can chat with your colleagues. In there, the chat tool is really neat. And your meeting agenda your meetings for the day are listed in the Zoom app as well. So it's really cool. Take a moment to look at it. When you are presenting or in a session, you can also set yourself to do not disturb, so it won't ping at you in any way. So that's what I did this morning for this session as well. So download the Zoom app from the Software Center and make sure that you are checking for updates regularly. The difference between a meeting and a webinar, I just wanted to mention because I think this is still a little confusing for some people. Meetings are what you're used to. It's what we're doing every day. It's this session right now. It's an interactive session. It's for staff meetings, for trainings. They can accommodate up to 1,000 participants. Last time I checked. Users can mute and unmute themselves so they can have more of a conversation, and they can turn their video on and off. Webinars are a little bit more like an auditorium presentation. So if you think like Dr. Pisters is speaking, you don't want everyone muting and unmuting when someone is really doing a big presentation. So webinars do not allow people to mute or unmute or show their camera. They accommodate up to 500 people. Only the panelists can speak, and a Q&A panel is used in place of those microphones. Also, there's no breakout rooms, so there's less interactivity. It's like sitting in a large auditorium is what it's meant to do. You can convert a meeting to a webinar or a webinar to a meeting. So if you set up a meeting and you have regrets or you decide you want to do the webinar setting, it is extremely easy to convert this. It's literally one click through the Zoom platform online, and vice versa. If you set up a webinar and you want to go to a meeting, you can convert that with one click. Okay, so thank you. Someone said, if you want to host a larger webinar, you can request your audience size to be increased. I did not know that, so we learned something new. Sweet. So we can have up to 3,000 people in a webinar if you request ahead of time. And again, you can convert that meeting to a webinar or a webinar to a meeting. I've had to do this before when I changed my mind or someone I was working with changed their mind on the type of platform they wanted to use. The number one thing that Leslie and I wanted to ask you to do is prep, practice. And I know you probably know this, but when you're scheduling your meeting, you need to set up your alternative hosts. You can go back and add additional alternative hosts, but it's really important to have an alternative host, because what happens if your internet goes down? What happens if you lose your voice? What happens if you, get really sick or something like that? I hope none of those things happen, but it's really good to have alternative hosts. These are people to back you up. Before you, when you're setting up your meeting, you also want to choose, how are people going to enter the room? Do you want the waiting room like we have now? Would you rather just allow people to come in? You can also go into your Zoom settings and let people join at any time. So if it's a meeting where you don't mind people coming in ahead and mingling and chatting, you can allow participants to join anytime without the host. You do have to change your Zoom settings. I will send out these slides and the instructions are linked. Also, please select mute participants upon entry. It is super embarrassing if somebody comes into the meeting and they're still talking to their kid, their spouse, their dog, their bunny, whatever it is. So you can sort of keep the room a little calmer by muting participants upon entry, and you can just check that box. Other thing I wanted to mention was registration. So registration, it seems like people still aren't super comfortable with this. But what registration does is if you set up registration, you can actually get a good, clean record of who attended your session. So their name, their email address, and you can ask them additional questions as well. Registration can be set up only through the Zoom website. So you can schedule your meeting on your Outlook calendar, go back to the Zoom site and check registration, or you could schedule your meeting through the Zoom website and check registration. Okay, yes, we're going to talk about the ding dong sound when people come in. The doorbell song, I shouldn't have said. Okay, so those were just a couple of things to do ahead of time. The best practice, again, is to update all your Zoom settings before your meetings. So you don't want to get to the meeting and then think, oh, I really want transcription, but I didn't set it up. You want to have those things set up ahead of time. So think about what you need in the meeting. Again, you can set in your global settings through the Zoom website to mute participants upon entry every time. So that's just auto checked. You can choose to auto save the meeting and webinar chat. There's a video on how to do that. So if you want to be able to view the chat later to answer additional questions or notes, you can turn the sound notification off when someone joins or leaves. You can turn this off in your global settings online, but also if you are in the meeting, I think Janice answered this one. If you open up the participants panel, and you guys probably can't do this because you're not the host, but there's a way to just turn the, is it the participants panel? Yes, it is the participants panel. I'm looking at the chat right now. There's a ... at the bottom, and you can uncheck the play sound when someone joins or leaves. I hate the doorbell sound when you're waiting for a meeting to start. There's also a way to turn on a focus mode in your global settings, which will turn off everyone's cameras. So this is more for like a classroom setting. Or if you really want people to focus in on the speaker, you can turn on a focus mode. And there's a video to explain that a little bit more. You also want to set up your meeting polls and quizzes online to allow alternative hosts to add or edit the polls. Sorry, I'm not speaking clearly this morning. Did I miss anything, Leslie?
I don't think so.
The closed caption, do you have to set it up at the beginning? I think we checked this and the closed caption is global now. Will you double check that, Leslie, in the settings online if the closed caption is?
Yes,
global?
I will check that.
Thank you. I think it's global. I think the institution turned it on for accessibility. Someone can request the transcription, and I always forget to turn it on, and I apologize. Okay. So when you're in the Zoom room, this is another thing that's sort of a pet peeve for me and for Leslie, is being in a meeting. and people are not muted. Someone should be in a position where they can be a co-host or the alternative host, open up that participant window and mute somebody really quickly if somebody is chatting during the Zoom. It happens. I don't think anyone means it on purpose, but it's super distracting when you hear noise. So always have that backup person in your room who is going to listen for noise, open the participant panel, and just hit the mute button on whoever's being loud. You can tell they're being loud because the mute button is going to be grayed, but you'll see it bobbing up and down the color that they're talking. You always want to have someone monitoring the chat for you. So it's really hard sometimes to keep track of the chat while you're presenting. So having someone look at it with you is really helpful. And again, the sound notification when someone joins or leaves, you want to turn that off. Does the chat record direct messages? It does record direct messages as well. People are making jokes there. Okay.
The answer is no, the direct messages. So if you're
doesn't?
chatting between participants. However, having said that, everything is probably recorded in the background. So you should be careful about what you're talking about between participants.
Yeah, we should double check that because we actually tried it yesterday and I could see direct messages, but I want to double check it for you.
Because it can change. That's the other thing.
Yeah. And as Leslie said, just everything you write down could be recorded somewhere. This includes in your Skype messages, obviously your email, anything you're recording digitally could be saved there. So keep that in mind when you're talking to someone. Keep it professional and straightforward. I'm not saying anyone's being unprofessional, but it's just important to think about. Okay. Yes, you can text each other. Yes, so the host and co-host can see direct messages. So that's what I thought. So just be careful. Be professional. You can turn off the video if someone is distracting. I think this is okay. I've seen people like eating a full, 7-course meal. Their cheeseburger, and they forgot to turn their video off or they didn't think it was important. But if it feels distracting, you can open that participants panel or your alternative host can, and they can turn their video off. It's okay to do that. You might consider hiding your self view. So if you're looking at yourself a lot, which I'm not saying, we all do it. You look at yourself sometimes and you're like, oh my God, my hair is terrible today, whatever it is. You can go up in the top right-hand corner and hide your self view to reduce that distraction. You can also hide non-video participants. So if there's just a black square with their name and you don't want the extra noise on your Zoom window, you can hide those non-video participants. And you can also spotlight a speaker. So if you are going to be the alternative host and helping out, you can actually click on the person's video and spotlight them so they stay at the top of the queue when they're speaking. Yes, and hiding your self view could reduce fatigue as well. I think it's just something we don't think about, but I think it can be helpful. Okay, Zoom fatigue is real. So for the waiting rooms, I don't think a lot of people do these, but the waiting rooms were created for you to be able to control a little bit more of who's coming in. And so no one can Zoom bomb you. I haven't really heard about Zoom bombing in a while, but just so you can control who's coming into the room. This is helpful if you're doing something where you're interviewing people maybe and you don't want them to just jump in the room whenever. So you can go to your global Zoom settings at mdacc.zoom.us. You can edit your waiting room options. You have a couple options. You can choose that everyone goes in the waiting room. So that would be the case where, maybe you're doing an interview, you want everyone in the waiting room and you'll let them in when you're ready. You can also choose only users not in your account. So that's what I have set up for tool time, is only users not in our account. If you were put in a waiting room, it's probably because you're still listed as a guest. If you don't want to be a guest anymore, you can just go to this website, log in, and put your name in there, and you'll no longer be a guest. You'll be MD Anderson. So pro tip for those of you who maybe are newer. You can also customize the waiting room. So if it is something like an interview, you can add a logo, a description, and they've also added in the latest version an ability to add a little intro video for people that are sitting in the waiting room so they can view the intro video. But I mean, I'm not exactly sure what you put on the intro video, but maybe an intro to what you're teaching, or we'll be with you in a few minutes, whatever you want to do. Okay, so let's see. Yes, I think, Lisa, if you see guest by your name, it's because you're not official, and it's probably why you can't see some people in the directory as well. So you just want to get those people to log in here, and they'll be official MD Anderson Zoomers. No, that's not right. Zoom users, because Zoomers is something else. I've heard music playing while we waited for a session to start. I have not tried that. Has anyone else tried the music? I think the video, you could have music going. We'll look it up. Okay, someone said they use the music. Just using YouTube, okay. Cool. Okay, we'll explore that more and we'll post to the team some instructions. Thank you for bringing that up. If you would like to record, make sure you have this set up ahead of time. Not everyone has this set up. So just open your Zoom room and make sure you have the record button. If someone else set up the meeting for you, open the Zoom room and make sure there's a recording button. If you don't have recording permissions, you can go to Insight and you can request recording capability. We are not supposed to record regular meetings for privacy purposes, but we can record educational sessions. That's my understanding of recording. When you record, consider how you're going to share that recording. They give you an option to share, to record to the cloud or locally. When you record to the cloud, they give you a link and a passcode. You can turn the passcode off so you can just share the link with people. If you share locally, that means you have an MP4 file and you have to upload it somewhere. So maybe to stream or something like that. The cloud recordings will delete after a certain amount of time unless you go into your settings online and you tell them you don't want them to be deleted. This is to save space. They don't want to just have, you know, a bazillion recordings online. But if you are planning on keeping this recording for a while, change your settings so they won't delete for you, or use the MP4 file and put it on stream somewhere where it will be saved. When you're sharing your screen, there are some additional options that Leslie and I were looking at. Number one, close out everything when you're sharing. It's not fun to hear someone else's Skype ping during a session. It's actually kind of triggering to me to hear Skype because then I'm distracted thinking my Skype is going on. Shut your email down, close out Teams or whatever else you're using, close it out. It will also keep you from having pull on your bandwidth as well. You can use Alt-S on your keyboard to open the share screen, this screen right here, really quickly. The basic share is what most of us use. You can share your whole screen. You could share just an application like your slide deck. You can share your browser. So if you want to demo something online, you can use the whiteboard, and you'll see there's an option to share your phone. I probably wouldn't do that as much unless it's an app that's only on your phone. So those are basic, and we all know most of those. I think there's a question. How do we see gallery view? You should be able to see gallery view in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. There's a view tab, and you should be able to select gallery view. Let me know if you can't. If you've ever played with the advanced sharing, so when you go to share, there's an advanced tab. There's some other options. You can do the PowerPoint as the virtual background, and what that does is shows you on top of the slides, which can be more interactive. You could play around with that with a coworker. It's kind of fun. They've added this where you can share just a portion of your screen. What it does is open up a window, kind of like Snagit. You can select the section of your window you want to share and only share that section. So if you're just sharing, you know, a tiny portion of your screen. You can share audio. So just the audio of the music, something like that. Video. You can also share those while you're sharing using the basic share as well, but these are just more targeted to only sharing one thing at a time. And you can share content from a second camera. This is like a document camera. If anybody remembers back in the day when your teacher had to have an overhead projector or something to display a document, some of the younger people might not be familiar with that, but you could have a separate camera displaying, a book or a document or something. The other thing the content from the second camera will do is you can share yourself. So you can have it focus on your camera so that you are the focus of the share. You are the share. So if you really want people to only focus on you, you can share your own video and make it the only thing that they see on the screen. So just an addition there. You can also, if you look at files, you can share local files from OneDrive or your local computer. So those are the basic things about sharing. Let's see what I missed did I miss something, Leslie, in the chat?
No, there was a question, a follow-up to the view question, which was they were looking to change the view in the middle of a recorded meeting.
If you record to the cloud, you can select which kind of view you want to download. So you can download with the speaker view or with all the people. There's a couple of different options you can download. So try recording something.
So if you are the presenter, you can choose what you want to download.
If you record to the cloud, I believe. Yes. Because I've done that before. So if you had regrets about sharing the speaker view, you could turn that off and just have the screen of the recording shared.
Okay, so follow up to that is I used to be able to download the presenter view or gallery view. They have that option when you want to download. However, when you click on it, it doesn't show it, only presenter at the time.
Okay.
So maybe that's changed.
I think we'll
reconfirm.
You were able to not very long ago, but we'll check again. It does change. So your controls when you're sharing, sometimes I see people get tripped up on this, and I do too. We always ask the question, can you see my screen when we start sharing? You don't have to do that anymore because there's this little green option where you can click down and it'll show you what the participants are seeing. It's a tiny little window and it'll show you what the participants are seeing. You can pause your share. So if you need to search for something on your desktop, you can click pause share. No one will see what you're bringing up during that time, and then you can unpause the share. You can also do a new share quickly. So instead of unsharing and resharing the next thing, if you click new share, you can just switch from PowerPoint to your browser, whatever you want to do. So take advantage of these options. You can also show or hide your meeting controls with Alt-Shift-H. There's also an option under More to hide your meeting controls. So if you hate it popping up and down, you can go to More, hide the controls, and then just hit Escape when you need them again. Okay, so someone said it's annoying that anyone can share their screen. You can turn that off.
Actually, no, you can't. I just looked and it is locked.
Oh.
It's locked by the admin to all participants.
Turn it off. What about in the Zoom settings online? Can you turn it off?
I was going to look, but definitely not in the meeting itself. Like I'm looking at the settings.
Okay, check on the settings, Leslie, if you don't mind, and we'll
sure.
Let people know. Horrible. Thank you.
So we do have a question. Are all of these options only available in the app? And the answer is no. Some options are in the app and some options are actually at the website. So there's some things you have to do in the website.
Yes. So you need to get comfortable with the app on the desktop and also the mdacc.zoom.us website. And I think I have a screenshot of the app a little later, so I'll show you how you can get to the website.
And we have a question about gray boxes, which we're going to get to.
Gray boxes. Okay, so let's do sharing your sound first. So when you share your sound, you've got a couple of things. If you're just sharing sound, you can click on the share sound button and that will share your sound. So if you've ever played a video in a presentation and nobody can hear anything, it's because you didn't check this box. I jumped ahead on this, Leslie. You can also click optimize for video clip. And this will try to help it from being quite so slow. It will speed up the share of the video. Does that make sense, Leslie? Did I say it correctly?
Yes.
Okay. The other thing we wanted to mention is your audio is important. I still go to meetings where people don't have a microphone, a good microphone or good sound. Using a laptop or webcam mic, if you are presenting, it's not enough. You're getting weird feedback. You might sound far away. Maybe consider getting a microphone if you're doing a presentation. Test your microphone ahead of time and make sure you know how to select your mic and switch between your microphones. Okay. So this is the Zoom app, and we're looking at the audio section. So under here, you can do some additional things to set up your audio. So in the Zoom app, when you click on audio, you can go to Zoom optimized audio, and you can suppress some of your background noise. So they have a couple of options there. Automatically is an option. You can do low, medium, or high. I have mine at high because I have street noise outside of my house. So play around with that to reduce the background noise. It works really well. So you might want to do that just to reduce the sort of street noise, dog barking, phones ringing, whatever it is that's happening. Okay. Why do we see gray boxes sometimes? So if you've ever been in a session and someone's sharing and you see gray boxes, this is because they're sharing their screen and you can see their meeting tools, their participants box, their chat box, their meeting share toolbar. So how do you share this, fix this as a host? When you want to share a video, you can just share the video file. That will correct this. The other thing you could do is share the video on a second monitor. So if you have two monitors, have all your Zoom stuff on one monitor, your video on the monitor that you're sharing, so none of those Zoom controls pop up. You can minimize all your Zoom meeting tools before sharing. That's not perfect, but it's an option if you only have one screen. You can also share only a portion of your screen, which means keeping your Zoom tools on the unshared portion of the screen. So the reason this really happens is because you've optimized your video. I believe that's what we found out. When you select that optimized video box, the good thing is the video will play better. The bad thing is that these gray boxes are going to pop up. The best fix to me is to just have two monitors, share what you're presenting on one, keep the Zoom controls on the other, or do the portion sharing if that's better for you. Does that help? Okay. Okay. There are tons of engagement tools. It's recommended that you incorporate an activity every 10 to 15 minutes if you can to break up the monotony of what you're doing. I'm going to go over 30 minutes. I'm sorry. Yeah, like I'm doing right now, Janice. So engagement tools, make sure you've practiced using the tool and you know who's going to launch them. So do you have a moderator with you, like a partner that's going to launch your polls or your quizzes or your video, whatever it is? There's also a whiteboard annotation, the nonverbal feedback where you can do thumbs up and emojis and things like that. I think you're all familiar with that. If you've noticed in a webinar, the emojis float up now during a webinar. So if you put a heart, it floats up and it's a little distracting to me. So Janice said one tip is when you're presenting, make sure to look at the camera and not look at your screen. I do that all the time, but yes, I agree. Some best practices: have a housekeeping slide deck ahead of the presentation. Don't spend the first 10 minutes of your presentation doing housekeeping. Have those slides rolling ahead of time to take care of housekeeping, like please mute. We're going to have an activity today, whatever it is you want to let people know, have that running ahead of time. Quickly intro your agenda. If you start in on a session and you're just talking at random on things, people are going to get bored really quick or lose attention really quick. So outline your agenda first thing, like short and sweet. This is what we're going to do. Let your audience know how to interact. If they want to chat or if they want to unmute, you need to give them direction on that. Don't linger too much in the beginning on intros. Start with a quick icebreaker, a poll, some sort of interactive item, but keep the intro short. I think we've all been in a session where there's a 15-minute intro on who this person is, and you just lose your attention. And for images, videos, etc., don't overcomplicate it. So I showed you all those engagement tools. You do not have to use all of them. Pick a thing, 1 or 2 things you want to do during the session, and do those really well. Don't try to, break the wheel and like do all the things. Practice, practice, practice. Pull your coworkers in. Super fun to practice and try things out and try to figure out what's happening. Test your tools and make sure you know who's going to record, who's going to launch the polls. Again, I'm repeating myself. Whether you're going to use that virtual background or not, is it distracting to use the virtual background? Consider accessibility always, whether somebody might need the closed captions or not. And again, if you're presenting, shut everything else down that doesn't need to be open. It's pulling bandwidth and it could slow down your presentation. Okay. That was really fast. My Zoom tips for presenting. We probably could do a version 2 and a version 3 and a version 4, but let's see what else everybody said.
We do have one question. Can you download a Zoom virtual background if you're on VX Remote?
I have no idea. Does anyone know? Has anyone tried it?
I haven't used VX Remote since the very beginning of the pandemic, so I would say the answer is probably no.
Probably no, but you can ask for...
Yep. And Anna says I was told we can't. So,
right. So most things on virtual desktop are pretty static and you can't download additional things. You can minimize your virtual desktop and still use Zoom though. Okay, so someone said Zoom has an avatar you can create, which is interesting. That's cool. So what I want you to do, this is your action item for today. Just join the Tool Time team if you haven't, and I'm going to send it out afterwards. Keep sharing these tips because it really helps me to hear what y'all are doing. And if you ask questions, we do investigate and try to answer those questions if we're able, or get you to the right person who can help. So please reach out through the team or email me directly, and we'll try to help you figure out what's going on and what we can and can't do.
And as always, Larissa, you're going to be sharing the slides and the presentation, the recording.
Recording slides. I have a feeling all of you know a thing about Zoom that I didn't present today. So again, please share. If you want to send it to me, I'll post it to the team. I don't mind if you don't feel comfortable. And yeah, I really appreciate this community and all of you. So thank you for joining in. And I will do